watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains.
And welcome back to the show. Here's a look at some of the political headlines from the past week. There's a plan to build more industrial buildings on the east side of town that some residents aren't happy about. Neighbors say they're worried about health hazards and having those eyesores next door. The 2040 land plan is in the very early stages of development and still needs several votes at City Hall, but east side residents say they're getting ahead, even hiring an attorney to help voice their concerns. And it's the next step in the Loop 88 project as TxDOT held their last meeting to discuss the 36-mile proposal and present those route locations. The areas being discussed this time are the sections connecting Shallow Water to Wolfforth and the section going through South Lubbock. But as we heard there, many farmers are upset. This project is breaking up a lot of their land. Public comments are being accepted, though, until August 8th. You can stop by the TxDOT office or call for more information. Another issue facing our South Plains farmers as discussions surrounding trade and tariffs escalate. The Trump administration is setting aside $12 billion to help subsidize all farmers and ranchers who may be caught in the middle of trade disputes. But this bailout has faced some backlash from leaders on both sides of the aisle.
I'm not for bailouts. I'm not happy about that. And a lot of farmers aren't as well. It may be needed, though, because this is coming from the effect of what the administration has done, and it's an admonition that tariffs are harming agriculture and harming farmers, and so it's not what they prefer.
He gets us into a trade war. Our family farmers who are already struggling will need some help, and then now the president acts like he's the hero coming in with a $12 billion package to rescue them.
But here locally, Steve Verrett, the vice president of South Plains Cotton Growers, says the payout will be good for local farmers in the short term, and most of the producers he's talked to are really pleased. He says they're also supportive of the administration's efforts to secure better foreign trade deals.
It's really been music to the ears of most cotton farmers that I've talked, all the cotton farmers that I've talked to, that they're glad that we finally have an administration, a USDA that's willing to stand up and say, you've been cheating, and we need you to get right on this deal.
Right now, the USDA plans to distribute the money incrementally through the Farm Service Agency, but the final plan is still being put together. But the most important piece of legislation for American agriculture is now one step closer to the president's desk. A select group of lawmakers from the House and the Senate, including Representative Jody Arrington, are getting ready to sit down in conference and hash out the farm bill they all agree on. KMAC's Anna Wernicke spoke to Republicans about what we can expect in that final bill.
Republican Congressman James Comer is also a soybean farmer and says he knows the satisfaction of a good harvest and the devastation of a bad one.
I've spent my life around agriculture policy.
He plans to rely on his expertise when he sits down with a group of lawmakers to hash out a final farm bill.
It's imperative that we have a strong farm bill that provides a credible federal crop insurance program.
The multi-billion-dollar bill includes everything from crop insurance to rural broadband, but the group of lawmakers disagree about new work requirements for the food stamp program known as SNAP.
The biggest difference between the House version and the Senate version were the changes that we made in the House with respect to able-bodied individuals to require them to go to work 20 hours a week.
Democrats, like New Mexico Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham, say the new work requirements would leave millions of Americans hungry. In a statement, she said she will work to protect the SNAP program throughout the negotiations.
I do believe we can get something into this final bill.
Texas Republican Congressman Jody Arrington says he's going into negotiations with an open mind, but will fight to keep the work requirements.
It won't look like the House bill. We won't get everything we want, but we've got to have some reform in that area. It's too important.
Conferees only have a few weeks to work out their differences. The current bill expires on September 30th. In Washington, I'm Anna Wernicke.
So here to spend 5 good minutes with us is Congressman Jody Arrington, all the way in Washington. It's always good to see you, even through the screen.
Good to see you, Avery, and I don't know if this means that Brian's looking for a new job, but I approve of you taking his place.
Don't worry, Brian, I'm not out to steal your job, I promise. But in the meantime, we've got quite a few questions for you while we have you on the screen. Now, we just heard a brief comment or two from you, but expand a little more on that give and take that's going to be happening in these negotiations in regards to the Farm Bill.
It's critical. We got to get it right with respect to the safety net, which is basically giving our farmers and ranchers the tools that they need to manage risks. The two big risks are weather, that's crop insurance, and then market risk. There's a lot of volatility in the global market with respect to agriculture. So we restored cotton to the safety net prior to the Farm Bill, but in this past year. And then you've got to make important investment in infrastructure so we can sustain these rural communities. If you don't, you can't sustain vibrant ag economy. And that's roads and bridges, that's health care, but it's also closing the digital divide. And then lastly, and I think this may be the most contentious point in the negotiations, is making sure that we have policies for food stamps and other government assistance programs whereby able-bodied adults are encouraged to work in order to receive the benefits of the food stamp program, or quite frankly, any government assistance. I think we got that welfare to work reform right in the House bill. They didn't even touch it in the Senate bill. And we have 7 million surplus jobs in this country. Our economy is growing like gangbusters, and we want folks that are on the sidelines to get off the sidelines. It's actually, for the recipient, better for them and their quality of life long term. So I hope we can do something in that component of the Farm Bill as much as any other.
Now, obviously, on the topic of agriculture and the national conversation this week surrounding those subsidies, billions of dollars for our ag producers, what's your take? I know there's been controversy from, both sides of the aisle, and then many speaking out in support, but what's your take on it for us?
Well, I think in a perfect world, I'm for more trade and less aid, but this is far from perfect. I think President Trump is right on. China has manipulated the markets in so many ways. I just think we got to be careful we don't project our feelings about China to other trade partners that have been, I'd say, relatively good trade partners. The best approach to this is the free market approach. Do more free trade, especially in the Pacific Rim, where they'll feel the greatest pressure. Open up new markets and opportunities for our producers, because the president, and I was in the room when he said he would not let the fallout from the trade disputes with China end up hurting our farmers. He said he would take care of them. Now, we experienced this with cotton, with ginning assistance, when cotton was taken out of the Farm Bill safety net in 2014 and the bottom fell out of the cotton prices. I see this no different. It's just a larger package of disaster relief. We cannot have this be a long-term solution, but if we want to smooth out the pain and the fallout that is happening by no fault of our producers, but because our president is having to take drastic measures, I think it's necessary. I think we've got to use it sparingly, and I think we've got to use it in a defined short term, and then we've got to do the more free market approach in the longer term.
Lots to think about in, like you said, the short-term coming days, but also in the months ahead. Now, really quickly, last but not least, I want to ask you about your legislation that passed concerning your fellow Plainview High grad. Tell us a little bit about the bill and just how excited you must have felt when it went through.
Yeah, this is personal for me because Chief Petty Officer Navy SEAL Bill Mulder was not just an American hero and a warrior's warrior fighting for our security and our freedoms, but he was a friend of mine from high school. Bill had a tough time after 20 years of combat as a leader of the Navy SEALs, thinking about his purpose and mission back as a civilian. I mean, you can only imagine. So this Transition Assistance Improvement Act, named in his honor, would apply the philosophy of an ounce of prevention is greater than a pound of cure. That is, let's get ahead of this. While they're active duty servicemen and women, let's assess where they are from a mental health perspective. Let's assess the tools they need from an education and workforce training so they can be just as mission-oriented and have just as great an impact as a leader in our communities as a civilian as they did wearing the uniform. That is a huge opportunity, not only to make a difference in the lives of people like Bill Mulder, but to actually save lives. And so I'm grateful to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle who helped me get that through.
Wonderful stuff going on this week. Thank you so much for being here, Congressman Arrington.
Thank you, Avery. Good to be with you.
And still to come here on Talking Points, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement making headlines at the U.S.-Mexico border in recent weeks, but this time the controversy is right here at home in the hub city. We'll have the story coming up next.